I looked so bad. Oh, shoot, I don't want mom to be upset. Let them think it was wrong. Let you think it was right and give yourself peace to just see and be you. You should never pick up and dial if you don't know your reason.
Yo, welcome to another episode of the Modern Sales Leader Podcast. We're here to share battle-tested tips and tricks from the trenches to help you go run your sales businesses better. Jill Bruno is our guest today. She is one of my best friends in the SaaS world, and she's an amazing friend in real life. I've known her for years, and over the years, she's gotten to lead multiple teams across many different functions. She's here to share all her wisdom with us today. We go super deep on cold call openers. We look at coaching and how to coach effectively and have good conversations with reps. We also go very deep into what KPIs are needed to track success in a sales development function. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's rock and roll. What's up, y'all? We got Jill Bruno in the house. If you do not know Jill by now, I don't know if you have a LinkedIn account. She's incredible, and she's here to share all her wisdom with us today. Jill, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. And just to give some people some context, who are you? Tell us about some of the titles you've worn, some of the experiences you've
Mhm.
had in SaaS so far.
So, to sum it up, I have been in the sales development space for 11 years. So, starting to date myself here. But at this point in my career, you name it, I can really check off every single box in terms of inbound, outbound, small business, mid market, enterprise, again, international, domestic. You name it, I've done it. I was an SDR for many years, so I think that's what has allowed me to be a strong leader. Is I've sat in your in your seat. I've been in your shoes, and I've spent maybe the last 8 years or so leading teams for again just every box you can check off at this point.
I love it. So this is a curveball question, but what would you tell Jill Bruno 11 years ago, who's new to SaaS, eyes wide open? What the heck is this? What if I mess up? What if I get fired? What would your advice to be to her if she came and asked you?
Oh, geez, I would have a lot to tell her, but I would say don't be your own worst enemy because that is something that I've noticed I have been. So
Mm,
stop and smell the roses, celebrate every single little win that there is, have your to do list and, celebrate when you accomplish that instead of adding, adding, adding. Because for me, I felt that I always wanted to do more, do more, do more. I didn't actually celebrate the fact of all of those wins, big and little along the way. So yeah, don't beat yourself up. Don't be your worst enemy and be proud. Like it's okay to accept compliments. It's okay to advocate for yourself and be proud. Don't ever negative self-talk to yourself.
heck yeah. I love that. That's really good advice, especially for us performance minded people. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that. So let's get into it. You having 11 years of experience in this field, I'm hoping you have some strong opinions on some of the
Mhm.
practical, tactical questions I'm going to ask you. So let's start with like the first thing that happens when a rep picks up the phone, their opener. What do you think makes a good cold call opener?
So just being really direct and as brief as possible. So, hey, Jack, this is Jill from company name. I was hoping to speak with you briefly. Do you have 2 minutes? So, what you're going to
Okay.
notice is I didn't ask, is this Jack? Am I speaking to Jack? So, really just be assumptive that you have that right person and you're just hoping to speak with them. So, have that permission based opener.
Okay, so permission based. All right. And if someone is the wrong person, how do you handle that? If they're like, oh no, this isn't Jack.
Oh, shoot. I thought I was speaking with Jack Knight. Did I dial the wrong number? Like, who am I speaking with? Because you also have to consider data providers. They get a little, they get their wires crossed, but is it a
Mhm.
gatekeeper? Is it, the right line? Or sometimes there's another Jack Knight out there and you just get that wrong person, but just try to
Yeah.
assess who you're speaking with. And, is it a referral or bad data?
Referral or bad data. There you go. So if they're still within the right company, that's more of the referral play, right?
Yeah. Like maybe you got, again, just your wires crossed and it's still the company, like, "Oh, shoot, I'm
Mhm.
looking for so and so. Can you help me out?" Ask. I think a lot of people are scared to ask what they need, which in this case is a referral, a number, or again, if it's bad data, like, try to find something else. But, "Oh, can you connect me
Yeah.
to them?"
So little nugget here that I teach reps, and maybe you agree or disagree. When you're asking for that referral, I actually
Oh.
tell them to not use a last name initially. So it'd be like, oh no, this is the wrong number. Oh, okay. Does Jill is Jill heading up marketing over there? I'm trying to get in touch with her. So I wouldn't say Jill Bruno,
Mhm,
because if someone was talking about one of my friends, I wouldn't use my friend's last name in that context. So it just builds
mhm.
like familiarity to drop the last name. Then if they ask like, oh, Jill who? Bruno. like you don't know Jill, like Bruno. So that's
Mhm.
like a nugget. Do you think that's cool? You agree, disagree?
No, I absolutely agree. I would only say if you're going after huge enterprise accounts, that's when there could be multiple folks with the same name. So that's where you
Yeah,
might have
is
to
Matthew
anticipate,
there? They're like, yeah, we
like
have 72. Which
Mike.
one? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where I would just, and again, not saying not to drop the last name, just anticipate they might not be 100% certain, but the clarity in providing a department, like you mentioned, should point you in that right direction. But yeah, you have to act familiar because that's going to help get their guard down that, you already know that person. They should know them. So let's move this along.
Cool. Okay. So you ask basically, hey, do you have 2 minutes? Decision tree here, right? Let's say I say, not really. What's up?
So this is where you want to very, very attentive. Like you're busy. Do I hear a baby screaming in the background? Does it sound like you're driving your car? Does it sound like there's a meeting going on that, you're on mute, but you're actually on a Zoom? So listen if it's a real objection or a fake objection. You're not always going to be able to tell, but are they faking it or are they real? And pay attention to tonality. So let's pretend it is a real, like, oh, I'm busy. Like, oh yeah, I think I hear a baby crying in the background. I hope you guys are well. Let me call you another time. Just
Mm,
now's not the time. But if
yeah.
you are going to push through, like, yeah, great. I'm glad I caught you. I just need 2 minutes and then jump into, your elevator pitch or, your reasoning. Like, don't try to ask, how's your day going? How are you? Like, they
Yeah.
have 2 minutes, whether they're lying or not. Do your best to respect that. And then that's where you jump into that purpose of the call because you should never pick up and dial if you don't know your reason before you click to dial that button.
So good. There's a lot of meat even right there. So one of the things that I like that you're doing is you're not opening a call with two open-ended questions of like, do you have 2 minutes? And then how are you? Because at this point, you're wasting their time, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of reps will do that out of nerves. They'll like accidentally ask two open-ended questions right away when it's better to do exactly what you said. Oh, cool. Well, the reason I'm calling you is XYZ. The other thing that I like that you're doing is you're getting right to the point of the call. So, for example, if I were to say, hey, the reason I'm calling you is because I've been working with other marketing leaders, blah, blah, blah. Does this call make sense for you? Or where do you go from there, Jill? Do you start asking about like, is this a priority? Have you handled this before? What software do you use? What's one of those like filler questions at the end?
Yeah, there's a lot of variations with that where, I work with persona-based approach or, lookalike customers. And I just want to see if this is relevant for you. And then bring it back to that topic. We're hosting strategy sessions, just want to see if it's relevant. So some people like to do on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate yourself? Or would you say you're average, above average, or below average? And
Yeah.
that way you're setting themselves up to identify the gap. Or if they're like, yeah, things are great, oh, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear things are, going really well on your end. Other teams that I've talked to that also feel they're above average, they've optimized their process or strategy by doing X, Y, and Z. Would you say you're doing that? So you're going a step further now to
Mhm.
see, are you actually great? Like, are you actually above average? But you're giving them something to measure again. So what's
Yeah.
important here is it's a measurement versus what knowledge you have and ways you can help versus somebody who might be or perhaps under exaggerating the reality because they might not know better. I like to believe all people are good, so they just may not know better.
I think that's important too in the context of cold calling, where they didn't wake up that day and start thinking about, oh, this is a problem I have. This is a problem I need to solve. Chances are they're used to status quo. And unless
Mhm,
they've been tasked to improve XYZ KPI or whatever, they're probably not thinking about the issue. So you're doing a good job of highlighting, like, hey, in other conversations I'm having, this issue is coming up. How are you actually doing with that? Oh, we're good, right? Because they're not thinking about it. But then you bring up the benchmark of like, well, specifically XYZ, and now they're like thinking about it more deeply, and
mhm.
they're like, oh yeah, you know what, you're right. Like we're not really where we want to be, maybe.
And the way I said it is you're also not attacking them because you don't want to come across like you stink at your job
Mhm.
because you're not doing this. Feed into like, oh, I'm so pumped you're above average. Like, you must be a fantastic leader. I have no doubt that you are. But just play
Yeah.
have you, other teams that say that are doing this. So it's a really good way to open that conversation, but you're not making them feel less than because you are trying to prove whether or not that there's truth behind there.
Yeah, 1000%. And then just to back up one more step, your awareness when you're calling is so key because a lot of reps would try to push through like the baby crying in the background or someone's like
Mhm,
clearly fumbling around in the grocery store or something. A lot of reps will
mhm,
try to push through that. You're just not going to get the momentum you want. Way better to do what Jill said, which is like, hey, let me call you back then. This sounds like a terrible time. Because in their
mhm.
brain, they're going to go, oh, that was a nice human being. That's cool. Then you
Exactly.
call back,
And
you remind them of that, make it a joke like,
exactly.
"Hey, did you make your way out of the grocery store? Hey, did your kid finally, fall asleep?" Like, you can
Mhm.
you can have fun with it and kinda rekindle that human to human connection.
1,000%. Because again, when you push through and some reps, they might be coached that way. They're nervous of hitting quota. So every connection counts, which it does. They're not paying attention. It's
Mhm.
better to call back at a time when you have their attention. Because also, too, how are you going to book a meeting with somebody at the grocery store? They don't have their computer, they don't have their calendar. They're going to no show. So
Yeah.
just keep all that in mind. And this kind of ties back to like, be kind to yourself. It's okay if you don't get it right this second. Lay it up for the next time you call. And like you said, Jack, remind them of that moment. Be
Yeah.
human.
Cool. So speaking of timing, let's go to like cadence structure. I feel like this is a black box for SDR leaders because there's really only like two ways to do it that are mainstream, I think. I think there's like the Agogi method, and then everyone tweaks the Agogi method. And then there's also like the JMM approach, which is a very like rapid, choppy copy type approach. So for you, what do you like to see in terms of spacing and touches in an outbound cadence?
And if I'm honest, I'm so over all these frameworks because everybody has so much conviction they're right. My
Yeah.
advice is follow what's best for you because every market, TAM, ICP, they're all going to be different. And you should also have a specific outbound play. If you're going to throw somebody into something that is persona based and a little more generic, you can spread that out a little bit. I mean, I would say have at least 6 emails, 5 to 7 phone calls, maybe 3 LinkedIn touches. I like to do that approach, which is around like maybe 14 steps around, give or take 12 to 14 business days. So you're getting to the point because the data that I've analyzed is when you really stretch it out, that's not increasing your reply rate. It's taking time for you to effectively prospect somebody else earlier on. And you can also have nurture drips where, in 30 days after that 14th day, you send them a note, maybe another 30 days. So that way you are trying to catch them at a better time but also know, like, is it a pre-event sequence? You have to hustle because you have a timeline. Is it a follow-up afterwards? Okay, the event's over. You can stretch that out a bit more. So I would say be mindful of the scenario. Like, are you going after LinkedIn followers? Is it a follow-up to a really great conversation? Is it a referral that maybe you want to be a little more aggressive with because you spoke to their colleague who gave you so much to go off of? You want that to be top of mind because you know that referral is going to be like, hey, you sent me this person, what'd you talk about? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not very clear cut, but I think it's because there is not a one size fit all. But
Yeah.
you also need to know your audience. Is your ICP like recruitment and sales where they're on LinkedIn all day? They're at their computer and, butt in a seat. Or do you go after people who are out in the field where they're not at a computer and you only have their mobile device to dial? So, be conscious of that too, because that's going to help guide your steps to, again, effectively connect with your specific persona and target, which again is going to be different than the next person listening to this podcast. So,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
loaded answer, but there's not a one size fits all.
Well, I agree. When I first started outbound, the standard was like a 21-day sequence, like set up in a very specific way, bunch of emails and all this stuff. And it just wasn't working for us. So then we had to go figure out like, okay, the reason we started with this template is because we didn't know what to do. So like let's use the template that everyone says to use. And then it like doesn't work. And you have to go
Mhm.
apply your brain power to like, wait, hold on, our buyers, they're not really at their computers a lot, like you said. Or maybe there's some contextual stuff like an event. By the way, on the event piece, do you like to reach out right after an event happens where everyone else is reaching out? Or do you like to space it out, maybe at the risk of being too late to the party?
So for events, which I will say it gets messy everywhere you go. So be that leader
Mhm.
and take control of it. You should have 3 sequences. You should have one that's pre event. Should you have a booth, or maybe you're going to be an attendee too? Pre event, how are you going to get their team connected with your team? However, it makes sense for you. When that event starts, end it. I don't care if somebody's mid sequence, be done with it. Let the event flow because people are not checking their email. It's chaotic. Let it be organic and hopefully, the person there has a target list where they can try to find the people that you weren't able to get, in touch with. So again, pre-event. Then you're going to have your post-event, which is going to be Did people actually show up for that meeting? Do you need a no-show conversation? Or, maybe your AE is swamped. You're like, hey, I'm going to keep these three great conversations. These ones weren't as great, still something there, target them. So then you have your post-event sequence like, hey, I heard you had a great conversation with my colleague Jack. Picking up from traveling, they specifically wanted me to reach out to get a meeting scheduled. So hopefully you can get, your SAO credit there. And then the third is have some type of net new. Maybe they didn't answer your first sequence. They weren't eligible for your second sequence. Hey, Jack, so sorry we missed you at the event. I heard it was great. Major takeaways included boom, boom, boom. Now that the chaos has ended, let's pick it up. So those three sequences, and keep in mind for travel,
Yeah. Yeah.
where are they going? Don't hit them up the day it ends. Don't hit them up the next day. Don't hit them up the first business day after. Give a few days because otherwise you're going to be noise. You're going to be kind of forgotten about. But I think 3 days post, 3 business days post event is a good start. And then make sure again it's long enough that you can stand out when 50 other people might be reaching it.
Yeah, this just goes back to being human. Like, we
Yeah.
just need to picture ourselves. Let's say we just got on a plane on a Friday to fly to Austin, Texas. We were there for this crazy weekend, booths, a lot of colleagues, a lot of late dinners, late nights out, and now we're flying back home on a Sunday. Are you person that is being empathetic and inserting yourself in those shoes? Are you going to want to get blown up by a bunch of sales reps right now during that time? No. Heck no.
Turning it
And
off.
yeah, you're turning it off, and then when you get back Monday, are you going to be cleaning out your inbox and following up with your teammates and getting your priorities set up? Yeah, you're probably not gonna be open to sales combos, right? And
Mhm.
so I totally agree, like, you gotta be aware and cognizant of the event timelines to make sure that you're not just noise. Because I
Mhm.
guarantee you 20 other SDRs are reaching out when they shouldn't be.
Because you also have to understand, like you were just saying, their first few days back, they're in their seller mindset. They're not in a prospect mindset, which would be your prospect. They want
Mhm.
their list clean. They want to, sync up with SDRs. Maybe they have to manage it or work with a partner team, a lot channel team, whatever. They need to get their professional ducks in a row before they're interested in answering a cold call from you because their mind isn't there yet. It's all the
Yeah,
psychology behind it. Yeah.
cool. So let's go more towards, like, the rep side of the house. What is one question you like to ask in one-on-ones to get your reps talking?
So, what I always found effective is to ask for a 3 by 3 every single one on one. So, I want them to come prepared three things that went really, really well since we last spoke, and then three areas of improvement. Whether I agree or disagree, it gets their thinking going. And it also allows me to create mentorship on the team. So, if somebody's going to be, here are your strengths, you're crushing this objection. If I identify that as an area of improvement with another rep, now I'd be like, hey, Rep A, you're doing so great here. Why don't you book some time with Rep B? I really think that you can encourage them and really help them out. So
That's
that
good.
way I'm delegating, creating bonds between the team and also additional responsibility. So it's kind of a longer question, but I like that. And then it also fills the gap of like, hey, this is your time with me. What do you have for me today? It gives that agenda. So they're always going to have something for you.
If I was your rep, I'd probably frustrate you a little bit because I'm really bad at recapping a week and kind of like
Mhm.
taking note of, wait, what am I? I don't know. It was a blur. All I know is I'm
Yep.
working hard. What's your tip to like a rep like me who'd be like, Jill, this is going to take me like an hour to think of, and my answers are going to suck.
I've been there and same where you can't think of 3. I'd rather you have 2 really good ones than 3 that so I would
Mm,
just say when it happens, write it down. And you have to be intentional. I'm bad if I'm honest, like, I'm bad at recapping things too. So if I know I had that highlight, you have to make sure, like, "Oh, this is what I wanna bring to my one-on-one," or like, "You know what? That cold call crushed me. I know I can work on this. Let me jot it down." And the more you practice it, you're gonna remember, and also, it takes a couple meetings of your manager to be like, "Listen, Jack, this is 2 weeks now, you weren't prepared. I understand you're busy, but I really need you to try a little bit harder." It's kind of that disappointed speech where you're like, "Oh, shoot, I don't want mom to be upset, like, I'm not gonna
mm,
do it again." But it happens. You just have to be really intentional about recognizing it when it happens, otherwise you won't remember. So that's why, again, I
yeah.
suggest a doc. Like, have your own doc. You don't even have to share it with me. Keep it up in a tab, jot it down.
Yeah. Something I've told my reps to do too is make sure they block 15 minutes before our one on one to make sure they have time to
Good.
prepare for it.
That's
And,
a
you
good
know,
idea.
the best reps, they don't need that, but most reps, they're being coached as professionals. And so it's kinda like hey, like, this is the parachute, right? If you find yourself 15 minutes before a one-on-one not prepared, here you go. So I always try to make sure that little sliver is on their calendar every week.
That's a really good idea.
So more down the coaching vein, which KPI do you swear by to know that your reps are going to hit goal? Is it cold calls? Is it like show rate, qualification rate? Like what's like the main one where you know, hey, if you're doing this, you're going to hit goal?
So I can't answer that with one piece. So
Mm,
I'm going to break your question a little bit. I really like to use a reverse calculator because that's going to be unique to the individual. Because I
yeah.
believe in cold calling. I believe about 80% of your target should be hit via cold call and that 20% from email or LinkedIn. So I really believe be effective because you can also control the dials and what you say, where an email, it's probably going to be templated. So you have less control. But where are you losing the conversation? Are you getting all hey, do you have 2 minutes? No, bye. What did you specifically say that turned them off? Because in your head, is it wrong words, wrong person, wrong company, or timing?
Mm,
All that goes through my head when I am coaching. So again, where's your conversation dropping off? Is it a certain objection? You got through the intro. Now you're speaking, but in the example I gave, they say they're above average and you just lose it every single time. Okay, what's happening right there that if we got 5% better, and again, there's calculations in the reverse calculator I have that does the math for you. With 5% improvement and 10 extra calls per day, that could actually be 3 extra meetings per month. So it's
yeah.
really just like analyzing the data you have, whether it's your, CRM, engagement platform, whatever it is, use that data and do the math. Like maybe your connect rate, call your cell phone. Are you coming up as spam? Get a new number. How is your connect rate going to increase? Changing the time per day that you're dialing. Like rotate numbers, don't use the same thing, but be really conscious of your actions and then relate that back to the data that of improvement can relate to more or less meetings, which I guess
Yeah.
we would
Yeah. Yeah,
less.
right. Well, the backwards math is the way to do it.
Yeah.
And I actually agree with the answer fully. Where the backward math takes me though is dials per day. Ultimately, that is the thing. Like based on all the math that's coming backwards down the funnel, this is how many dials you need to make today to hit quota. And so
Yes
if
and no.
if okay, go for that. Yeah,
What
why?
if the tasks per day, based on them not being so great on the phone, says they need to make 250 dials per day or 500
Right.
dials per day? So that's
Right.
where I do agree. Volume, law of average, the more of something you do, the more results you should see. But I'm also, where can we get efficient? Like
That's good,
where,
yeah, yeah.
where are you
If a
losing
rep
them?
had $250 a day they needed, I'd be like, "Yo, we have some red flags we gotta figure out,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
why is their connect rate 1%?" Right? So I agree. Let's break the funnel down for people because it took me 3 years, I think, before I found out that the math of SDR is so simple and it's linear, and if you can document it, it changes the game. Where you start, right? The end of the funnel, where we start to go backwards is how much pipeline we need, right? Is that the first one?
You can do front to back or back to front. For the sake of time, we can just talk about working from revenue down, but typically,
Revenue
yes,
down, yeah.
revenue number. How would you achieve that with your capacity metric?
Okay. So typically, like average sales org, let's say they have to close like, I don't know, 5 mil in business, right? Well, you want 2 to 3x pipeline coverage of that number, right? Is that so far?
Give or take, yeah.
Okay. So SDR team, you should be bringing in like 15 million of qualified pipeline, right? So then we have to look at, okay, cool. What's our ACV? So how many qualified ops do we need to make sure we have that pipeline coverage based on ACV, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And Showry and all the other pieces that go into that.
Yep, yep. So then you would back down to exactly how many ops do you book that actually qualify? So qual rate. Then you go one step back. Well, how many ops actually show up,
Mhm.
right? Then one step back is cool. When you're on the phone with someone, when you pitch to meeting booked. One step back from that would be like call to pitch. One step
Mhm.
back would be, I know the terminology is different, but one step back would be connect to, I don't know, maybe conversation to pitch, right? And then connect to conversation and then
Mhm.
dial to connect. Is that the
Mhm.
funnel? Am I missing anything?
I mean, it depends. Everywhere could be different because I could see somebody feeling really confused. I understand
Yeah.
it, but I could see somebody hearing that and being like, "Oh, geez,
What
where
is
do I
happening?
start?" So
Yeah.
even just to simplify it, like I'm an outreach girl. Look at your outreach call disposition. Identify clear definitions, whether they're provided to you or you create them yourself. Take control of your career.
Mhm.
What specific definitions will you use call dispositions in a certain way? So I would even say, look at that data. And that's what like the call funnels that I look at where, it's objection, intro reject, or close reject, whatever you have, but you can add or remove some. But if you can't, create your path there. And then that's where you can figure out what calls, from the dispositions, where can I improve? That's going to help you with your volume. And then to your point, the volume is also going to, trickle up to how many meetings you get from it? What is your show rate? So on and so forth, because it really is looking at, those leading and lagging indicators, but it can be really, like you said, it took 3 years. It can be really overwhelming and confusing. So I would say simplify it if you can and, use your data. And if not, go to your leader. And if you are a leader, go to your ops team or enablement team, because what I found is it's really hard to accomplish on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. Agree. Your ops team, by the way, should help you set that up. And it could and should be automated as well. So, related question there is what tech tool, what CRM, SCP, like what part of your tech stack could you not sell without?
I'm biased. I'm an outreach girl. I've actually never used a competing tool to outreach. So for me, that is a must. But to be fair, if I had an opportunity to use one and I had no choice, like not gonna quit over it. But and I honestly prefer Salesforce over HubSpot. I think there's a lot of functionality that you get and deeper analytics within Salesforce. And I'm gonna throw a curveball here. Like I'm not a power dialer girl. I don't think you need, I'm not gonna throw out names because I'm not here to bash anybody, but I don't think you need upload a list of 1,000 people and to make 1,000 calls per day. The feedback I've gotten is it overwhelms people. They don't know what to say and they are so flustered, which I feel that I kind of would be too. I feel like you should have good data in that click to dial is all that you need. But
Yeah.
then again, you need Sales Navigator that really helps with your list building. I'm also a believer. I don't think SDRs should sit in data providers. I think that you should have help. So that way, if you have resources that can pull those data, you should go, they should be uploaded into Outreach. You sit in Outreach, you do your activity, and then you book your ops in Salesforce and you just cruise through crushing activity. I
Yep.
know that's not
Yep.
always realistic, but you're going to need a data source or even your CRM. If you're at a larger org, like right now, I'm really privileged. We have so much data in our CRM. It's where half our contacts are.
Mhm.
And we're really lucky for that.
Yeah. I think the most underrated role in outbound sales right now is that like data prepper, right? That
Mhm.
researcher, that list provider. You should have someone in your org whose full-time job it is to keep lists full with accurate data and then be tying those lists to campaigns. So your reps
Yeah.
are no longer spending 2 to 3 hours a day trying to find contacts and add them to sequences. Now they're on the phones or they're sending emails to really good people and prospects.
And absolutely, because I think a good balance is you should have 350 to 450 active prospects at a given time, give or take, working, adding 100 accounts if you can per month to your, I mean, it depends again on like enterprise versus SMB, but, adding 100 accounts per month. So that's a
Yeah,
lot to keep up with to be
that's a
effective
lot.
that you need resources. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't get them. So that's where I'm a big advocate for it. It's a bottleneck. 2 to 3 hours per day in a data provider. Like, ugh, nobody wants to do it. That's a different skill set than prospecting.
Yeah, it was the most annoying part for me as an SDR. I'm like, I want to talk to people. Like, get me away from all this research. So related then to tools, I have to ask because it's 2025, and if you don't leave a combo saying AI, you failed. Are you guys using any AI tools to help with prospecting?
AI is in every single tool now. Like, I feel like I can send an email and they're like, oh, that was AI. And it's like,
Mm,
I wrote it and hit send. It wasn't. So I think that's
mm,
a loaded question. I would say, we're piloting certain things. I know I just found out about those tools that, you can role play with automatically. We haven't trialed it yet, but, you know, we have kind of your typical tech stack. In past lives, I have tested AI and I hated it. These
mm.
auto, you know, messages getting sent on LinkedIn. And like, it's funny because I don't know, it was somebody I knew well. They got this auto like, "Hey, do you wanna do this?" And I'm like, "You're pitching a close friend of mine, like, eek, like, AI fail," or, "You're
Yeah,
just targeting the wrong people," or even I get AI messages every day like, "Hey, we have an open SDR position. Do you want it?" And I'm like, "I've been leading teams for 8 years. Like, you
yeah,
just saw I have sales dev experience and you're pitching me IC thing." Like, I just think a lot of it can go wrong. I think the
yeah.
future is there for AI. I am on the AI train, but it's not gonna replace people. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
actually, I have a funny story. I tried cheating and do one of those AI headshots where, the ads or you upload this ugly picture of you and like you come out looking fantastic. I looked so bad. I'm actually going to post it on LinkedIn one day. And I was like,
Please do.
AI, you are not replacing me because if I look like this, like,
I
bro,
love it.
I would never book a meeting or have another professional experience in my life. It
Yeah.
was that bad. So, oh, it was so funny,
You
but
need to post that. You need to post that.
I will.
Yeah.
You will laugh. You will laugh.
I agree with the perspective. I think where AI is right now, it's more of an enhancement, but it's not a replacement. And it's
Mhm.
going to take a long time before we get near that. But even I too am really gun shy on like AI enhanced emails and stuff. It's just bad. It's not what I would say. Where I like AI is on the research side. And I
Mhm.
have no affiliation with Perplexity AI, but they're a really good, like smarter chat GPT that actually pulls in like real world, articles and stuff like that. So when you're researching a company, use Perplexity AI. It's a really good researcher because it actually pulls in like news articles and stuff that's relevant. But yeah, I'm not there yet either on the
Mhm.
prospecting side or the outbounding side for actually using it.
No, I like that. Again, not only to set it and forget it, but if it could automate research, absolutely. Why not? Have
Yeah.
a computer scale the internet instead of, Googling it all day. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the other thing, to be fair to AI, is it requires a lot of programming and prompting, and it can do some amazing stuff if you put the time in. But most of us, we're like, oh, we hit the AI button, and we're like, why isn't it what I want it to be? It's like, well, it's not like that yet. One day it will
Mhm.
be, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um,
And honestly, the
yeah.
big issue is I've seen is it doesn't satisfy rules of engagement. It's like set
Mm,
it and forget it. This is the title and persona. But now you're messaging, they're messaging. Now we look
man.
silly. It's their account. That's an open opportunity. This is a customer. So now your account manager is upset. Like
Mhm.
it's just not there. But again, I think it will get there, but it
Not
depends.
there
Like you
yet.
said, AI means everything these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's wrap up with this favorite quote, favorite motto. What do you live by? What do you like to share with your team?
So, something that I have been putting a lot of intention to for 2025 is Mel Robbins and the let them theory. So, if you have personal conversations with me, I might annoy you. I am bringing it up to anybody that I can because it's helping me both personally and professionally. So, if you don't have her book, I really, really suggest it. But this is more of, again, paraphrasing what it's about, which is, let them think poorly of you. Let them think you stink. Let them think you made a bad decision. Let them disagree with you. Like, let them. You cannot change what somebody else does. You can't change their behaviors and you cannot change what they think. So the other side of it is let me. You control your thoughts and your actions as long as you're comfortable with what you said, with what you did. You made the best decision that you were able to at the time. Let them think it was wrong. Let you think it was right and give yourself peace to just see and be you. So I know that's not really a quote, but I have to say it. It's so
So
moving
good.
when you disconnect yourself because you can't change people. If you think about what stresses you, upsets you, gets you frustrated, I bet you 99% of it is what somebody said to you, what they think of you. Like, and it's not about you. Focus on you, your loved ones, your family, your life, what makes sense for you to do well in your career. You're going to feel so much peace and you're just setting yourself free of stuff that doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
let them, let them.
Let them.
So
Let
that's
them.
my
So
phrase. Let
that's
them.
that's the Let
Oh,
Them Theory by Mel Robbins.
love it.
So good. Amazing. Well, thanks for hanging out, Jill. Appreciate you as always.
Happily. Until next time. Until next time.
Till next time. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Modern Sales Leader Podcast. That was a really good conversation. It's always great talking to Jill. And I just appreciate how real she is, where she really cares about her reps. And I think that's something we always need to remember as leaders is at the end of the day, we're working with people. And we've got to start with people to get the results we want to get in business. And if we take care of our people, they're going to take care of our business. So hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, do all the things that we know to do for the algorithm. Drop a comment if you disagree with Jill, with me on any of this. She's very pro permission based opener. I know that's a spicy one, and we hope you tune in for the next one. And we'll see you then.